of the major strategies from the audio series that helped me out tremendously was turning the tables on the ants, or learning how to go conditional with my thinking. Ever since I can remember, I had trouble talking on the phone, whether it be answering phone calls or making outbound calls. It didn't make much difference. In fact, one of my former jobs involved answering 40 calls a day from customers in a call center. I remember my anxiety would build up at work as I would anticipate when the next call would come and would worry about how bad it would be. Most of the time, the calls were pleasant and I was able to handle the customer's issues smoothly. But back then, I was so terrified that I would get an extremely bad call where the customer would get really upset and yell at me, or that I would not make sense when talking to them on the phone and the customer would think that I was an idiot. Looking back at the time, I only had a very small amount of calls that were unpleasant, but the feeling that the next call would be so terrible was so strong that I believed that I would sooner or later get that bad call I was dreading. The anxiety eventually bothered me to the point that I quit that job and found another job that did not require me to be on the phone. A few years later, I discovered the Overcoming Social Anxiety series and I began doing the therapy on a regular basis. One of the many strategies from the series that really stuck with me, even to this day, is when you go conditional with your thinking and turn the tables on the ant's thoughts. I was so used to black and white absolute thinking, such as when I would say that the next phone call would be bad, that it was challenging to go conditional with my thinking at first. But after some practice and getting used to it by making a few phone calls at home, I was able to implement some rational thinking about phone conversations. I began telling myself, maybe it's not a big deal. It's just a phone call, and the other person on the phone will probably not be upset with me. And even if they are, it's not the end of the world, and that maybe this call will be okay, and I won't sound like an idiot on the phone, and I probably will make sense when I'm talking to the other person. A year after beginning the audio series, I was offered a new job that involved making outbound calls. Had I been offered the new job around the time I left that call center, I would have turned it down and probably would have searched around for a job that did not involve phone work. However, having now practiced the turning the tables on the ant strategy several times, I felt like I was ready to challenge myself and give talking on the phone at work another shot. When I was about to make my first phone call at my new job, the anxiety was still high, but not nearly as high as it was at my old job at the call center, thanks to all the practice with the turning the tables on the ants. I was able to make that phone call successfully and did not have that strong negative feeling that I used to have after the call, such as that I was awkward, did not make sense, and the other person must have thought that I was an idiot. I continued to use the turning the tables on the ant strategy before every phone call I made at my new job, and after some time, my anxiety with talking on the phone began to gradually decrease. I became more comfortable talking on the phone at work, and I even received a compliment from my supervisor that I was very personable when speaking to someone on the phone. I discovered too that most of my phone calls were pleasant, and I only experienced a few unpleasant ones, which was surprising to me at the time. Eventually, I was able to get to the point where whenever I needed to make a phone call at work, I would just immediately pick up the phone without thinking about it beforehand. If I didn't have this strategy, and if I didn't use it like I did, I would probably still worry about having to make or answer phone calls, and I would probably avoid making phone calls whenever possible. But I'm glad that worrying about phone calls is something that I don't have to worry about anymore. Turning the tables on the ants is just one of the strategies that I learned from this series. There are other strategies that help me overcome social anxiety as well, and I will talk about those other strategies that work for me in another video.